Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 30th day of July, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, first graphic we've got is hazardous weather graphic, and we've got some illuminated areas, zones up there. The yellow areas, those are flood advisories, the Kobuk Valley into the northern, actually mostly the southern slopes of the central Brooks Range there, and doesn't really extend that far into the Koyukuk Valley, but that's for heavy rain, expecting 2 to 6 inches to fall over the weekend. So I have flood advisories out through Sunday night into early Monday morning, and due to 2 to 6 inches additional rainfall expected there in the forecast, some minor flooding will continue to take place. There already has been, and so it looks like a wet weekend coming up. Flood watch there for the let's see, flood watch through Sunday night, early Monday morning as well, for the lower Kobuk and Noatak valleys, and that's for 2 to 6 inches of rain coming in there as well. And that's again, that watch is out. Flooding is possible in those areas. Actually, in the Kobuk Basin, expecting 2 to 6 inches of rain that possibly could result in some flooding conditions. So from there, moving on to satellite imagery, you can see kind of a let up in the precipitation today, as a couple of bands, one hung up over the eastern interior there, not really producing much in the way of any precipitation at all with it, other than maybe some isolated showers. Mostly mid and high level moisture, and then the area over the northern Bering Sea kind of blooming, enhancing, and that's the next surge of moisture that's going to be rolling right up to the northeast there into the resulting in the flood watches and advisories that we just saw. And so there's kind of a let up in the precipitation, although it didn't end, over the interior today, anywhere from, let's see, Indian Mountain, 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. at 3/10 of an inch of precipitation, as did Bettles, about 1/3 of an inch as well, and Caltech picked up 1/4 of an inch, and that front going across the eastern Arctic coast, they're about 1 to 2/10 of an inch, maybe some cases as high as 1/4 inch, fell all over the North Slope and Arctic coast along the front there, with Dead Horse, for example, getting about 2/10 of an inch of precipitation. Otherwise, still pretty breezy there, Alaska Peninsula. Enough of a gradient, gust 41 miles an hour at Cold Bay today, and about just under 40 miles an hour at Cape Newenham. And the southwest interior pretty breezy as well. Bethel gust to 30 miles an hour, and Cape Lisburne had a gust around 40 miles an hour. So winds not as strong as they had been, but still pretty breezy there. And rain, fog, and drizzle into the Pribilof Islands. A lot of low clouds and fog not showing up too much over the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Dense fog at Accoon Island this afternoon, down to a half-mile visibility there. And Panhandle, sunny and warm, just some cloudiness over the northern southeast coast, but didn't seem to affect temperatures too much. May held them down a couple of degrees, but still into the 70s, some cases lower 80s, with, who was it? Hoona had 82 at mid-afternoon, and it was near 80 at both Ketchikan and Wrangell, with sunshine, lower to mid-70s. Eastern interior, upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, in the eastern central Copper River Basin, with more sunshine there. And rolling this through again, you can see the moisture already spreading into the Seward Peninsula there, and that'll continue. And that's along that frontal boundary, and the enhancement of the clouds there due to the 998 millibar low that's dropped out of the Russian Far East. It's coming into the area there, and looks like today, though, most of the precipitation again was over the North Slope Arctic coast into the north central interior, and then mostly so showers along the Alaska Range, really isolated showers over the eastern interior, and just about nothing over the Panhandle. Just some clouds with that weak trough that spun up out of the low farther to the south there. And otherwise, not a lot going on over the Aleutians. Light rain, fog, drizzle, IFR over the Pribilofs today. Forecast for tonight, getting that system and the moisture streams northeastward, so keeps wet conditions over the western interior, especially north of the Kuskokwim Delta. May dry out a little bit over the on the lee side of the Brooks Range, over the north slope, maybe the Arctic coast, though it stays cloudy. And still a chance of showers. I probably have too many clouds there in over the Panhandle again, but there's a risk of some shower activity this evening. Kodiak Island, risk of showers, low clouds, fog, and drizzle. Also for the Alaska Peninsula, and light winds and mostly cloudy skies for south central Alaska on up into the say Nenana, maybe Fairbanks area, but more clearing as you head east. And that front just grazing the western Aleutians, but the one low tracks northeastward tomorrow to the western Arctic coast, bringing the moderate to heavy rain with it into the northwest areas there from the Seward Peninsula, starting to lighten up for the Seward Peninsula and getting a little more showery behind the system in the afternoon. But the front extending down to Kuskokwim Bay and the Pribilof, so rain periods of and fog in those areas. Rain pushing into the Kuskokwim Valley, but getting hung up on the western Alaska Range and staying west of Fairbanks, probably not too far east of Tanana for the rainfall there, and up to the Arctic coast of that weak warm front. Otherwise, risk of a shower or two for Kodiak Island. Partly sunny. Call it for south central Alaska tomorrow. Mostly sunny, east, Copper River Basin, eastern interior. And a weak trough might trip off a couple of showers there over the Panhandle, but it doesn't look too bad as Sunday, mostly sunny, warm again. Temperatures 70s, maybe near 80 there. Risk of an isolated shower over toward the border. Mostly sunny Copper River Basin. And to a lesser extent, in the Tanana Valley now, some of that moisture will increase the clouds a little bit there, but the rain will stay up near the, Yukon River or north and spread across eastern Brooks Range. And that system, pretty strong now. It could be a narrow band of gale force winds in advance of the front, mainly out over the central Bering Sea. Otherwise, just small craft advisories with periods of rain. Low temperatures tonight, upper 40s to mid 50s over much of the interior, except Barrow dropping, or Point Barrow, say, place formerly called Barrow, dropping to 39 degrees tonight. Otherwise, mid to upper 50s for the Panhandle, 40s, lower 50s over the Bering Sea. Highs tomorrow, 75 to 83 for the Fairbanks area, eastward over toward Eagle, Northway and Tok. And looks like a little bit cooler, but not too bad. 70 to 80 for the Panhandle. Some areas hanging in the upper 60s and mid 60s, upper 50s and mid 60s, southern Alaska, lower 60s, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, upper 50s for the Aleutians, and anywhere from 50 to 55 there from the Bering Strait to the Pribilofs. Seward Peninsula, 45. The low looks like the cold spot will be at Shishmaref, Teller, Wales, mid 40s there, and then the high or the lows for Sunday morning. Lower to mid 40s on the western Arctic coast, lower 50s on the east side. Mid 50s, eastern interior areas, north of the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, upper 40s, lower to mid 50s, south central Alaska, mid 50s, southwest interior, Alaska Peninsula, near 50 for the Aleutians, mid to upper 50s for the Panhandle. And looking at the high temperatures for Sunday afternoon, 75 to 85 there from the central interior, mid and upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. 84 is pegged there at Eagle, 81 Northway Tok, mid 70s Copper River Basin, 65 to 70 south central Alaska. Warming up also Kuskokwim Valley, 65 to 70, Bristol Bay, 60s, upper 60s, lower 70s, King Salmon. And a little cooler for the Panhandle there, but not too bad. Still call it 65 to 75, maybe some areas hitting 76, 77, maybe even 78 in a few locations.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for tomorrow morning, first day of the weekend. Marginal VFR along the Arctic coast with the Point Barrow area looking at some IFR, and then the southern slopes of the Brooks Range and into the northern Koyukuk, Kobuk Valley, Noatak Valley, all the northwest coast. IFR through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta coastal areas, and a ways inland, most of the Yukon Delta actually, almost up to the Kuskokwim Mountains, up across the southwest mountains, there into the southern Kuskokwim Valley, Togiak, Dillingham, and the Pribilofs IFR, all of the Aleutians, and the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula IFR to southwest Kodiak Island, and from about Pasagchak on up across Fognak Island, marginal VFR, into Cook Inlet, but southern Kenai Peninsula, the western Prince William Sound, possibly Portage, maybe Girdwood, IFR, Susitna Valley up to the Alaska Range, but VFR, Central Eastern Copper River Basin, anywhere north of the Alaska Range, Yukon Flats, in Toward Eagle to North Wyandotte, and then Northern Panhandle, VFR, IFR, southern southeast coast. And for the afternoon, we're looking at conditions down that way to improve a little bit. IFR still along the central and south coast in areas. Marginal VFR, southern 3/4 of the Panhandle. So Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Juneau area, Haines, Gustavus, maybe VFR, Yakutat VFR, Copper River Basin, VFR across the eastern interior, and less IFR on the southern slopes of the Brooks Range, VFR North Slope, marginal Arctic coast, and IFR southern Bering Sea, the Aleutians, south side of the Alaska Peninsula. Not much change for Kodiak Island, IFR in the southwest areas there, and Bristol Bay marginal, and now some IFR southern Cook Inlet and Kachemak Bay on up to Resurrection Bay in the Seward area. And then for the morning Sunday, a lot of marginal VFR and IFR with over the western half of the state, and IFR pretty extensive along the west coast there, as well as the eastern and southern Bering Sea, Pribilofs, all of the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, again the Pacific side. IFR a little more widespread across Kodiak Island, and western Cook Inlet right up to say Windy Pass, IFR in the southern entrance there, and looks up IFR southern Kenai Peninsula, Resurrection Bay, Panhandle, just call it IFR, eastern interior, eastern Copper River Basin, central eastern North Slope VFR. And then for Sunday afternoon, improves over the interior, but still a lot of marginal VFR, central and west side there, IFR hanging tough, Nunivak Island and into Kuskokwim Bay area, Togiak, and into the southwest mountains. IFR quite an area there over the Bering Sea, Pribilofs, and the Aleutians. A little bit of improvement far western Aleutians. And marginal VFR for the Panhandle and the North Gulf Coast. And the Tuvik Pass, lowest conditions again, same pattern, lowest conditions with southerly flow, IFR, occasional IFR, southern entrance, VFR on the north side. Same thing for Adigan, IFR south, better conditions north. And Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional IFR pretty much covers it tomorrow, maybe a little improvement in the afternoon. Rainy, I'll go with some improvement, IFR to marginal VFR. Windy, southern approach, that's where you see the lowest conditions, possibly marginal at times. Isabel, maybe marginal VFR to start, then VFR for most of the day. Mentasta will be VFR from start to finish Saturday. Tanita, marginal VFR, turning toward VFR during the late morning through the afternoon. Portage, same pattern, marginal VFR to start, VFR to finish. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, about the same pattern, although 14,000 feet, pretty warm over the Aleutian, southern Bering Sea actually, 12,000 feet north of the Pribilofs, 8,000 feet all the way up on the north slope, 10 to 12,000 feet eastern interior and Panhandle, and southwest slope pushing surges of moisture, heaviest amounts up over the northwest interior slope, considerable moderate rime icing up there along the western central Brooks Range. Jet stream, 100 to 105 knot jet there out of the southwest there, Norton Bay right up into the north slope, and 50 to 65 knot winds at 9,000 feet, 3,000 feet, pretty brisk as well, 20 to 45 knots out of the south-southwest Alaska Peninsula, the Arctic coast. And turbulence, considerable moderate chop, surface 5,000 feet, Alaska Peninsula, western interior, and areas of the Brooks Range. Pretty smooth though for the eastern part of the state through the Panhandle. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the Earth and grows our food. While the sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the sun doesn't stay at the sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. And this is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane about 30, 45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from the space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system is going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal water forecast, light winds, they're all along the southeast coast. On the north coast, variable, 5 to 10 knots, seasonally 3 feet. On the south coast, mostly southerly winds at about 10 knots, seas 3 feet. Same thing for Clarence Strait, south winds at 10 knots. Light variable winds for the central inside waters, and Lynn Canal, southeasterlies, 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And for Sunday, Lynn Canal, south winds 15, otherwise east 10 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, northwest at 10, and light winds continue along the outer coastline. South coast, west-northwest at 10 knots with 3-foot seas, and variable to northwest at 10 knots for the north coast. Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast, the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound, as well as Cook Inlet. Looking at all light and variable, 10 knots, seas slide at 2 feet or less. Kamishak Bay, easterlies at 20 knots with 5-foot seas, and southeast winds 15 knots for the Barren Islands with seas only 2 feet. And for Sunday, winds will stay light and variable at 10 knots for Cook Inlet with 2-foot seas. Same thing for Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast, variable at 10 with 2-foot seas, and east at 20 knots for Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands, east winds 15 knots. And for the Alaska Peninsula, a little bit more wind out that way. Small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay for south winds at 25 knots with 5 to 6-foot seas. Kodiak Island, not too bad. Southerlies, south-southwest at 15 knots with 3 to 4-foot seas. And then moving on to, let's see, the Aleutians on... I thought I went by that too fast. I missed the Sunday forecast. Kodiak Island, east-southeast winds at 20 knots with 4 to 5-foot seas. And south side of the Alaska Peninsula, Sitkinak to Cape Sarichef. I'm sorry, Castle Cape to Cape Sarichef, east winds 20 knots. Sitkinak, Castle Cape, southeast at 20. Southeast 20, Bristol Bay as well, but 25-knot small craft advisory winds from the southeast for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Now, for the Unalaska Island, south winds 20 to 25 knots. Lighter though for Woonmak Island, south to southeast at 15 knots. Sadakanatka, southerlies 15 to 20 knots. And Chitka Island, southwest at 20, swinging around to the northeast from Kiska to Shimia at 15 knots. And then for Sunday, small craft advisories, Shimia to Kiska, north winds 25 knots. And Chitka Island, also small craft advisories for westerlies at 25. Adak small craft advisory, south winds 25 knots. Unmak Island, south 20 knots and southeast 15 to 25 knots for Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast, south to southwesterlies, in the small craft advisory level there at 25 knots, Pribilof Island, southwest at 15, northwest 15, St. Matthew Island. And small craft advisories for Norton Sound, south winds at 25 knots, west 20 for St. Lawrence Island. And the outlook for Sunday, light southerly winds are variable to south at 10 knots for Norton Sound, northeast at 20 there, St. Lawrence Island. And pick up in the wind there for the southwest coast, a good stiff southeast wind sustained at 30 knots for the entire southwest coast there. Pribilof south at 20, southeast 30 knots, 10-foot seas for St. Matthew Island. Up north, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southeast to 20, central coast east to 20, northeast 20 knots for the west side, all the way down to Cape Thompson. Cape Thompson to Wales, small craft advisories, east winds 25 knots. And moving on to Sunday, southwest 15 to 20 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and small craft advisories for the central and western Arctic coast for 25 knot winds from the southwest. 2 to 3 foot seas though, and west 20 knots from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort with 2 foot seas, and Cape Thompson to Wales, lighter winds yet, 10 knots out of the west. And for tonight, surges of moisture start to pick the rainfall up again, but the next front there south of St. Lawrence Island, they'll bring the heavier rain into the flood watch and advisory areas there for the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valleys, southeastern Brooks Range later on. Otherwise stays dry and mild and with light winds, eastern southern Alaska or east of the Alaska Range. Panhandle, risk of a few isolated showers possible this evening, but nothing too heavy. Weak trough moves in. Might be a little bit cooler tomorrow, but still looking good, dry through the weekend. And again, a stronger system pulls into the Bering Sea. They're kicking those winds up to just under gale force. And otherwise, thank you for joining us. That's all I've got time for, and see you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.